In 2002, the second best-selling album on planet Earth wasn't made by Britney Spears. It wasn't made by Mariah Carey, Celine Dion, or Whitney Houston. By the time December 2002 rolled around, only one record on Earth had outsold the debut album we are talking about today, and that was the soundtrack to an Eminem film. In a year where Eminem released The Eminem Show, where 50 Cent was recording Get Rich or Die Trying, where Norah Jones launched Come Away With Me, where Nelly dropped Nellyville, and where Shania Twain was sitting on one of the biggest country pop albums in history, a complete outsider, a 17-year-old nobody from a rural town of fewer than 6,000 residents, outsold them all. And here's what makes 2002 one of the most fascinating years in pop history. It wasn't just this one mysterious record. It was the year 4 women released albums that would, one way or another, completely change what the next decade of pop music would sound like. The glossy, perfectly choreographed machine that had run the late 90s was about to break completely. The question is, which one of these contenders actually held the hammer? To truly understand 2002, you have to walk into an Oxford Street record shop in the summer of 2001. If you asked the bloke behind the counter what the pop music landscape looked like, he would have given you a very confident answer. Pop was a pipeline, Disney adjacent, choreographed within an inch of its life, written by a few select producers in Stockholm like Max Martin, test marketed to 14-year-olds and shipped out in glossy CD jewel cases with belly button cover art. The machine had produced Britney, Christina, Mandy Moore, and NSYNC, and for 4 solid years, that machine worked. Top 40 radio belonged to it. Top of the Pops built entire Friday evenings around it. If you looked closely at the charts in late 2001, you could see the engine starting to sputter. Britney's third album debuted at number 1, but sold considerably less than her first 2. The singles charted lower, and I'm a Slave for You didn't actually make it into the US top 20. NSYNC had announced that they were going on hiatus. Mariah Carey released Glitter, which derailed her commercial momentum in real time. Industry executives, A&R reps, and MTV commissioners had started to whisper that the audience, and the girls themselves, were getting bored. The absolute catalyst for the shift arrived 6 weeks before 2002 even began, when Pink dropped Missundaztood. The label, Arista, had essentially given her the opportunity to fail by letting her make a rock album with Linda Perry. Instead, she tore up the marketing brief with raw, autobiographical songwriting that explicitly stated she was tired of being compared to Britney Spears. It ultimately finished 2002 as the 4th best-selling album in the US and the 2nd biggest in the UK. Pop's glossy era was officially on life support, but who was going to pull the plug? That brings us to the 3 contenders competing for the 2002 calendar year crown. Behind the scenes, the industry was scrambling to figure out the new formula. In Los Angeles, a teenage outsider had just been dropped into a room with a production team called The Matrix, because her label didn't know what else to do with her. Over in Queens, New York, a 21-year-old who'd been writing hooks for Ja Rule and Fat Joe was about to walk into a boardroom and be told that her solo debut was coming out in April. And elsewhere, an established pop veteran was quietly picking up the phone to call Linda Perry to engineer a complete, highly controversial reinvention. But evaluating this year requires understanding a massive transatlantic divide. The CD single was dying a slow death. MTV was transitioning its programming, and what dominated the US Billboard ecosystem didn't necessarily translate to the UK official charts. To see how our 3 contenders navigated this incredibly fragmented landscape, we first need to look at the ground-level records that defined the mood of the year. If you were in the UK, the absolute cultural event wasn't a song necessarily. It was a music video. A boxing ring, chaps, mud, a Redman verse, and a sheer theatrical commitment to completely torching a squeaky clean image. Everyone I knew had an opinion. The track sat perfectly on the radio alongside Sugar Babes' Angels with Dirty Faces, and both albums understood that the assignment for late 2002 pop was to sound a bit filthy and a bit grown up. But when I went to Florida earlier that summer, American radio felt like an alternate universe. It was Nelly's Hot in Here, Nelly and Kelly Rowland's Dilemma, and one particular New York vocalist on rotation every 15 minutes. My runner-up, Coming in at number 3 is Christina Aguilera. As I mentioned, she'd heard Missundaztood, realized Linda Perry was the producer who could translate teen pop graduates into something much more honest, and booked her for the Stripped sessions. Beautiful is the direct descendant of Get the Party Started and Just Like a Pill, in the same way Stripped is the direct descendant of Missundaztood. Both albums are about a woman who was handed a rigid, label-approved image and decided to set it completely on fire. Stripped debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with 330,000 copies sold in its first week, blocked from the top spot only by the 8 Mile soundtrack. By Christmas, the Linda Perry ballad Beautiful was climbing and becoming the defining anthem it was destined to be. So why is she only sitting at 3rd place for 2002? Stripped was only in the shops for 10 weeks of 2002. It finished the year at 122 in the US and 110 in the UK on the respective year-end charts. Christina's true main pop girl moment was loading for 2003, where Beautiful would win her a Grammy and her tour with Justin Timberlake would gross $30 million. For 2002, her late arrival leaves the door wide open for an artist who shattered a chart record previously held by the Beatles. My honorable mention, sitting firmly at number 2, is Ashanti. On April 2, 2002, her self-titled debut album was released and did something to the American charts that hadn't been done in nearly 40 years. It sold 503,000 copies in its first week, the biggest first-week debut for a female artist in history to that point. The album went straight to number 1 on the Billboard 200 and stayed there for 3 consecutive weeks. The very same week her album debuted at number 1, her voice was on the number 1 and the number 2 singles on the Hot 100. Always on Time with Ja Rule and What's Love with Fat Joe. She became the first woman in the history of the Hot 100 to hold the top 2 positions simultaneously. Once her solo track, Foolish, was added to the mix, she had 3 top 10 singles on the Hot 100 at the exact same time, a feat untouched since the Beatles. Foolish spent 10 consecutive weeks at number 1, and she won 8 categories at the Billboard Music Awards that December. However, when I flew back to the UK after my Florida Keys vacation and switched on Radio 1, the grip simply wasn't the same. She peaked at number 4 on the singles chart and number 3 on the UK albums chart, going platinum, not multi-platinum. Her worldwide year-end album position for 2002 was 17. She had the most record-shattering American chart run of any female artist that decade, but global pop dominance required an entirely different formula. Who managed to outsell everyone everywhere? The undisputed main pop girl of 2002 is Avril Lavigne. Her debut album, Let Go, arrived in June 2002, and initially, Arista Records had absolutely no idea what they had. For nearly 2 years, they tried to turn her into a country pop crossover act in the vein of Faith Hill, and then a singer-songwriter. When her earlier sessions came back too heavy and grunge-adjacent, the label panicked and brought in The Matrix to make something radio-friendly. They wrote Complicated in about a day. All summer long, rolling into the autumn and Christmas, the video of Avril and her band wrecking a shopping mall was on heavy rotation across every single music channel simultaneously. The angry, emo-adjacent vibes of tracks like Losing Grip and Unwanted were engineered perfectly for a generation that had just outgrown Britney, but hadn't quite found what was next. Millions of us felt exactly like that at exactly the same time. Let Go debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200, but it quickly climbed to number 2 and stayed in the top 10 for 37 consecutive weeks. By the end of 2002, it had moved 4.1 million copies in the US alone. Internationally, the story was completely absurd. She topped the UK albums chart, becoming the youngest female solo artist ever to do that at 17 years and 9 months old. Canada certified the album Diamond, Japan certified it Million, and Australia certified it 7 times platinum. Avril Lavigne ultimately finished 2002 as the second best-selling album in the entire world, right behind Eminem. She outsold every other pop album on earth, killed the bubblegum era on impact, and rewrote the rules for everyone that came after her. The ripple effect of Let Go was immediate and permanent. The Matrix became A-list pop rock producers overnight, and the Avril template, guitar-driven, slightly angsty, visually distinct, and completely unbothered, spread to everyone from Hilary Duff to Kelly Clarkson to Lindsay Lohan over the next 18 months. A traditional choreographed pop model didn't vanish, but it definitely stopped being the default setting for a major label signing. Which brings us to next week, because exactly 1 year before the pop landscape fractured in 2002, true pop royalty stepped out of the dark, introspective shadows of her previous era to release the breeziest, most sample-heavy pop record of her career, all while hiding a massive, multi-million-dollar divorce from the press. An era that forced MTV to literally invent their first ever icon tribute just to acknowledge her dominance, while she casually outsold the newest crop of teen pop hopefuls. For the full story of Janet Jackson's All For You, click here.